some sense of it all, but I can see it makes no sense at all. Is it cool to go to sleep on the floor? 'Cause I don't think that I can take anymore. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. I pushed the wrong button, so I moved myself over before I started streaming, so the stream is starting late regardless. Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today is, what is it? Monday, July 7th, 2025. And wow, the Department of Justice via Axios, maybe, has come out with the Epstein list is non-existent and he didn't do anything wrong. And wow, the whole thing is really, really jaw-dropping if it's real. I'm not sure if it's actually legitimate or if we're having a fast one pulled on us. Not sure, but other outlets are reporting on this as well. We're going to go do a deep dive in what they've said and what they're now saying. And it's very, very different. So that's interesting to note, if you ask me. Holly Doan got her account back. She was hacked and then she was able to get her account back and now I'm blocked. But I think that that's because I mouthed off to the hacker. Regardless, hopefully she unblocks me soon. Texas flood and now a North Carolina flood. There are interesting weather concerns and weather warfare that seems to be happening more and more. And also I've got some visuals about the flood that happened and just absolutely wild images out of Texas and terrible things, awful. I hope that, wow, what can you even say about what a disaster that was and is ongoing? They want a global carbon tax, and that's not surprising, but I think that people are going to let them get away with it, and that's pretty crazy. And the United States will say no until they don't have somebody like Donald Trump to continue saying no, and then they'll say you have to, or we'll use the military might of the United States to bring you on board this carbon tax thing. And it's not going to do anything, and it's been very costly to Canada, and it hasn't done anything to save our environment. They're using it for control. And conceal carry guns for Canada? Yeah, a recent court ruling opens the door for that, and people are, the responses are interesting. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we've got to start with Viva Frei highlighting the propaganda released by Mark Carney. What's his face? Pierre Poilievre is out in Alberta as well doing the Calgary Stampede. And it's an election thing. He put on a cowboy hat. Doesn't matter if you live in Ottawa, right? Doesn't matter if you haven't lived in Canada for years. You put on a cowboy hat and you go to the Calgary Stampede. But Calgarians are smart and Albertans are smart and they can see through this nonsense. So Mark Carney had to overlay the booing with music in order to use his propaganda video. And this person, Rick, says, it's perception management, total mind control, BS. Imagine that they know we don't want anything to do with them, so they have to lie to us and use mind control techniques to convince us that they're loved. So you slap on a nice, happy Canadian song over top of the massive boos coming your way, and no one's the wiser, right? And I guess so, except Viva Frei's got a clip of both situations. Here's the propaganda clip from Mark Carney's Instagram, immediately followed by the booing that actually happened, and the audio matters. Here we go.
Please welcome the Right Honorable Mark Carney, Prime Minister of Canada.
Oh my God, everyone's booing.
Boo. So people aren't buying this. And a lot of people were, this is probably some kind of contest winner or something like that, like beauty contest winner type deal, ambassador winner or whatever. But where's his wife? People are saying, his wife never travels with him, et cetera, et cetera. The things like a stampede are below her, right? Nonsense. Absolute nonsense. Here's Holly Doan. She says, hacker be gone, come back for more Blacklock's stories tomorrow. Same X account with thanks to the Real Wi-Fi, which is a guy who works he's global affairs director for X, and Michelle Rempel's followers and herself who got mad apparently. So maybe that's why I'm blocked. Who knows? But I'm glad that Holly Doan has her account back. Here she is reporting, and she says, main themes of Liberal Party elbows up re-election campaign were tested in confidential federal focus groups by privycouncil.ca or Privy Council Canada months before the US announced tariffs. So they knew the strategy they were going with. They knew it was a winning strategy because that's the lie they were going to sell us. That's was always going to be the case, regardless of the reality on the ground. The reality on the ground is whatever they tell us it is. So there you go. Canada, the food professor says, Canada's food price report 2025 predicts food prices would rise by 3% to 5% this year, and we remain comfortable with that forecast. In fact, the increase may end up being closer to 3% than 5%. Link to interview below. So he's saying that it's going to be less expensive, 3 to 5% increase. And that's crazy considering they removed the carbon tax. The consumer carbon tax is removed, and gas is, it's not $1.60 anymore, right? It's not usually $1.60. $1.50 doesn't feel cheap anymore. So that's interesting to me that we're in a situation where the food inflation is still going up at a pace that doesn't seem like a good. When we had the carbon tax, consumer carbon tax on things, it seemed like that was one of the obvious reasons for this inflation. And now that we don't have that on, and we still have the inflation, and people are saying that's kind of a win, I don't know, man. I have questions and concerns. Victoria says, here's a story of how Canadians are being hosed. A friend told me last night, small garage repair location in Kitchener hired a newcomer to Canada. He said the guy worked pretty good, showed up on time to his job, so that's all good. Worked there for 2 years under some type of government-supported program as he went through the process for his Canadian citizenship. Shows up one day and says to the owner, I'm not working here anymore. I quit. I became a citizen of this country 2 days ago, and now I collect welfare. So a few days later, he gets a call from the same person in the government asking if he wants to take another worker under their program. And he laughed and laughed, and he basically told him to shove it. And that, folks, is how we are getting screwed. Yep. And the owner of the business gets from this a subsidized worker. The government pays the salary of this worker, right? And so because they pay the salary of this worker gets preferential treatment in that they're not going to get fired because they're subsidized, right? And so there's a lot more paperwork to deal with all of that. And so it's an insidious way to undermine Canada's ability to be self-sufficient and employ people and all sorts of things. It's an evil thing to do to the citizens of your country. Prioritize foreigners and give them subsidies while ignoring your citizens, right? Wow. Ari says, let's go through all the things criminals can do in Canada and not have the Crown demand 2 years in the penitentiary. This is in reference to Tamara Lich. I thought he was responding to a Tamara Lich tweet, but anyway, regardless, the data is accurate. Tamara Lich faces 2 years in prison for the mischief that she caused during the Freedom Convoy, which I don't even know how they decided to pin it on her. I don't think that she had control of those people. If she said, you all have to leave, they would have laughed at her. Okay. Like it's not, some of them maybe would have listened, but most of them would have said, yeah, I don't think so, lady. So the whole thing is contrived in a way to punish her, to punish the convoy, right? That's the point. And the same with Chris Barber. Strangely, not BJ Dichter. Weird, right? Super duper weird. Anyway, Ari continues. He says, here's the things that you can do in Canada and not get 2 years requested by the Crown. Deal drugs, drink and drive multiple times with multiple times. Rob with violence, steal with violence, steal 20 times. Defraud seniors and the vulnerable. Beat your spouse badly, beat a stranger badly, beat or neglect a child. Possess underage illegal material, road rage and hit or smash people and cars, stalk people, harass women and domestic partners, commit Hamas in the streets. I don't think that's a criminal code violation, but I think I understand what he's talking about. The funny part about this is the Hamas protests, and I'll tell you again because I feel like it bears repeating. The Hamas protests are the same as the Black Lives Matters protest, blah, whatever it is. And it is the same as the Pussy Hats thing. It's the same as the people who were tearing down statues. And it goes all the way back to the people who were putting in front of trains flaming debris and not getting arrested. These are all sanctioned protests allowed by the government because they push the government narrative, and the government points to these things and says, look, see, people are violent, and so we need lots of rules to silence people on the internet or whatever. But also, you can never do what Tamara Lich did, or you'll have 2 years in jail, but you can do all sorts of these other things. Start wildfires that destroy humans, homes, and animal life. Beat up a cop. Spit in a cop or civilian's face while you're diseased. Help somebody cover up a murder. Should I keep going, or I can go on all day? And yeah, there's all sorts of examples, and we talk about it a lot. So it's very, very concerning. Here is the conceal carry thing, and the short version is jury acquits teen who claimed self-defense in fatal Toronto school shooting, saying he carried a gun because his neighborhood was, quote, like Iraq. I'm not surprised. When you import Iraq, then yeah, right? And I mean, all of the movies that I've seen about living in Iraq is, if you're Western, you have to live inside of a walled city. And if you're not Western and you go out into the regular city, or if you're Western and go into the regular city, things could go badly for you, right? And so, but we have to bring all of the people who live in those cities to our country for reasons and pay for them? Okay, why? And now people are allowed to carry guns and shoot people. An 18-year-old was murdered because this guy says, well, it's like Iraq. That's a defense? Now that's the short version. Okay, here's this guy. He's going to do a minute on this as well, and I think that his take on this is accurate. He's pointing out people defending their property are being arrested, but this guy's carrying around a gun and killing people. And that's okay. Here we go.
Tell me you live in Canada without saying you live in Canada. Just recently, a teenager was acquitted by a jury for having a firearm and murdering an 18-year-old. And the reason why the jury acquitted him is because his argument was that living in Scarborough reminded them of living in Iraq. Like, let that sink in for a second. Then on top of that, in Canada as well, in Ontario as well, a Vaughan man was arrested, last month or something, and charged because he was defending himself when there was actual perpetrators coming to his house to steal his car. He shot his firearm into the sky as a warning, and this guy got arrested. And you want to tell me Canada has the ability to determine whether we have rehabilitated criminals coming in upwards of almost 18,000 of them when they can't even figure out what's going on with our youth, and they can't even differentiate between what's actual self-defense and not?
Yeah, problems, and it's not getting better. It's not getting better. That's certainly another problem. Andy Lee says to block the sale or the contract between China and the BC ferry contract thing. And she thinks that they have the authority to intervene and block it, but Mark Carney wants to see this deal move forward. And so, I mean, again, I'm not really all that surprised because Mark Carney, of course, he wants to see these deals move forward, I think. But Harmon says, Mark Carney wants to hand BC Ferries $1 billion in taxpayer-backed loans so that they can buy ships from a Chinese communist state-owned shipyard, a country that meddles in our elections, uses slave labor, targets our institutions, and is deeply tied to China's military-industrial complex. Why are we subsidizing that? Suspend the loans, scrap the deal, build it in Canada. And Andy Lee says, block it. The Investment Canada Act allows reviews of foreign investments of any size to assess their risk to Canada's national security. The Governor and Council, GIC, may take any measure it considers necessary to protect national security, including to block the investment. So, interesting. Do you think that they will block it even if they have the authority? I think no. I think probably not, man. So that's unfortunate. Here's a quick reminder that the Remanded is doing some really, really difficult work and getting almost no traction because of the nature of the work. It's kind of wonky and it affects everybody, but everybody seems to just shrug and move on. So it's very frustrating. They need funding. And so Chris says, if you're interested in keeping up to date or helping out with regards to the citizen-led lawsuit against Elections BC, please follow the Remanded. And he says, thank you. And so, yeah, here's a link to it. And what they're doing is citizen-led lawsuit into the BC election. Violations 149 and 258, unauthorized administration of ballots, deletion of election material, irregularities, and more. And then it lists the irregularities. It says, follow us on Facebook, Vancouver Island Alliance, or on X, The Remanded, and Shareware Canadian. Every dollar supports legal action that could change the future of elections in BC. Take a picture of the QR code for details and link to the Give Send Go website. So there you go if you're interested to do that. It's difficult what they're doing, and it's frustrating because when you get almost no traction for all of this hard work, it feels like, well, no, if nobody else cares, then why am I even doing this, right? And I mean, there have been days, man. There have been days where it's like, man, if I'm the only one who cares about this, why bother? Like, why bother? But we carry on. John says, is there some kind of deadline we're under to bankrupt Canada? 2030. That's the deadline. 2030. Because if you have money, you you won't do what they tell you. But if you don't have money and no way to feed yourself or go to the bathroom or anything like that, then you're kind of screwed and you're at their mercy. So here's your cricket flower, and here's your pod, and here's your digital ID and phone. And without that, you can't do anything. Or you can go live out in the wilderness, have fun. But if you make it too nice in the wilderness, we'll come and crush you, by the way. That's what God's honest truth. They're not just going to ignore people who are self-sufficient out in the wilderness. They're not going to say, oh, well, those people seem to be nice and they're living and not bothering anybody. No. They'll come in with tanks and say, you people are a danger. Or they'll burn the whole forest and then come in with tanks and say, you people are a danger as you're trying to rebuild. I hope I'm wrong. I really do hope I'm wrong. Western Standard says Ottawa is preparing new rules to protect workers from extreme temperatures. This is climate safetyism. This is, oh no, it's 31 degrees with a humidex of 41 and you have to stay inside because it's too hot outside to go outside. And like, even if you've got a pool, too hot outside to go outside, can't you read, right? And so Statistics Canada found an annual of 110 people froze to death each winter compared to 31 deaths per year from heat stroke at work. This is standards to have people's jobs respond if it's too hot. Like, oh no, it's too hot outside, so we have to respond to that, and because we have to respond to that, you can't come to work today, right? Like, it's too cold, can't come to work today. And this is an attack on stability and people and employment. But 110 people aren't freezing to death at work each year. 31 people aren't dying at work from heat stroke. Those might be like 31 people die in Canada a year. I'm even suspect of that, but they're certainly not dying at work. The conditions are not. That doesn't happen. That absolutely doesn't happen. And if it does happen, investigations would start. All sorts of things would happen. So I'm calling BS on that. I don't think that's accurate or true. So they're going to use this. The whole article is talking about when they figure out the limits and things like that, then employers will have to abide by them. And this is a really good idea. It's going to save people. What utter nonsense! Apparently, the Toronto real estate market is collapsing, and who's shocked by this? Come on, like you can't sell shacks for $1 million and expect that to last forever. So here's what's going on.
New home sales for June are just out from the Toronto Regional Real Estate Board. This follows numbers from Vancouver and Calgary, where sales in all three cities are slumping and bidding wars seem to be a thing of the past. Scott Peterson is following this for us this morning. Good morning, Scott.
Good morning, Juanita.
So what's the reason for this downturn?
The reason is persistent uncertainty. This is according to all three real estate boards across the country, and this is despite real estate boards really getting ready for a busy spring market. We had rate reductions from the Bank of Canada, and they're just not seeing it this year, and they're pointing to all the uncertainty with our biggest trading partner, with the U.S. and the tariff impositions there. Let's take a look at what we're seeing from new numbers out from the Toronto Real Estate Board just this morning, that we're seeing basically the same story in all three cities, and as we're seeing rising inventories and lower sales and lower prices. So Toronto home sales last June and this June down 2.4% from last year, about 6,200 sold during the month. Prices also soggy from this time last year, now down about 5.5%. Average price now just over $1.1 million for all types of homes in Toronto.
I mean, I guess you can sell shacks for $1 million if you want to, but I don't think it's going to last forever. And 5% drop on the price of homes is not a small drop, right? And it's going to continue as well. That's not great. Let's talk about trade. What are we, 18 minutes in? Okay. Trade food professor is talking about supply management being in the crosshairs for Trump. Trump is going to introduce new tariffs on Canada today based on the supply management. And unless we fix it, it's going to come in. And that's, that's not great for him, right? Or not great for us. And so will Mark Carney fold? I think probably he will, but that's going to be more complicated than the digital service tax that happened previously. Food professor says Carney caves to Trump on the digital tax. Is supply management next? And then there's a Substack thing, and this is the quote from his Substack. It says supply management was built on Keynesian ideas of economic fairness, but it is calcified into a system that prioritizes farm gate stability over affordability, innovation, or market openness. It is no surprise that Canadian consumers pay some of the highest prices for dairy products in the world. Yep. Yep, we sure do. If you've been out east, you know, what is it? 2 liters of milk, 40 liters, 2 liters of milk. It's a 2-liter carton. And that's the same price I pay for 4 liters of milk in Ontario, roughly. Wild. Absolutely incredible. Lori Goldstein said, well, not anymore. Back then, it was $4.85 for 2 liters of milk when 4 liter of milk was $4.85 or $4.99 or something like that, maybe $5.50, but it hadn't gone up to $6.25 yet, right? So this is a few years ago since I've been out east. Anyway, I digress. Here's Lori Goldstein. He says, politicians overstating benefits of scrapping internal trade barriers. Left-leaning Canadian Centre for Policy Alternatives says they will do little to mitigate the tariff threat or significantly boost the economy. So all of these things that these politicians, provincial level premiers and trade ministers and things are rolling out to great fanfare saying, oh, we're fixing these problems. They're not actually going to address any of the issues. And the major ones, supply management, are still in play and being addressed by Donald Trump, President of the United States and de facto Prime Minister of Canada, the 51st state. So awful, absolutely awful. And like it's not a dead cert that Trump is the idea of what Trump was fighting for, returning control of the government to the people, is going to come to fruition. It doesn't look like he has control of his Department of Justice or anything like that. So what are you going to do, right? Anyway, here's one quick story before we get into Epstein. Sean Newman podcast says Canada sold $58 billion in U.S. treasuries in 1 month. And it wasn't random. It was a Mark Carney engineered tariff tantrum and a deliberate strike on the U.S. dollar. He abandoned foreign policy and moved to economic warfare. Yeah, I think that's probably accurate. Here's a longer YouTube video interview talking about this, and probably worth your time. I haven't watched it yet, but I'm interested in watching it. Breaking down these ideas is interesting to me, and I think that an argument could be made that what's going on is very bad for Canada, and Carney's in the perfect position to orchestrate very bad outcomes for Canada, and that's a unique situation. I don't think we've ever, Canada anyway, I don't think we've ever been in such a dire situation. Personally, I can't remember one. Let's talk about Jeffrey Epstein. Do you think that Jeffrey Epstein killed himself? I certainly don't. I don't believe the line. Dan Bongino and Kash Patel had an interview a few weeks ago. I showed you guys stories of all that. I showed you guys the actual clip of both of them saying Epstein killed himself unequivocally. He killed himself. It didn't have any outside anything. He killed himself. That's that. And so I didn't believe it then. I don't believe it now. Now, there is controversy. Is this a real, legit report from the Department of Justice? Is this real, or is this a meme that Axios picked up and then other people picked up because Axios picked it up? I genuinely don't know at this point in time. I thought yesterday that it was confirmed. Like I thought as I was going to bed that this was a legitimate thing. And then I woke up this morning and Axios had removed it. And so people are wondering if it's actually legit or if somebody's jumped the gun. And maybe it's a balloon. They're seeing how people will react. And it seems very angry. Very angry is how people will react. Axios reports yesterday at 8:51 p.m., July 6th, President Trump's Justice Department and FBI have concluded that they have no evidence that Jeffrey Epstein blackmailed powerful figures, kept a client list, or was murdered, according to a memo detailing the findings obtained by Axios. Huh. You don't say, eh? Weird. Here's Brianna, and she says, why do I think the previous administration deleted the Epstein files? When I submitted a Freedom of Information for Epstein's recorded phone calls and phone records, the Bureau of Prisons told me they had, quote, no records. So nothing here. Sorry, you can't investigate what doesn't exist. And so Dr. Simon Goddock says, why call it Epstein Files Part 1 if there's no Part 2? Yeah, Epstein Files Part 1, right? If you squint there, you can see it says Epstein Files Part 1, Phase 1. I think it says Part 1. So, yeah, the 1 heavily implies a 2. So what's in that first binder? Just Keith says, all that Epstein list stuff we've been waiting for. Here was Part 1. Here's Part 2. Our dream team will be taking no further questions. Oh, those drones? Those were our drones. Next question. Man, and we so want to believe it. We so want to believe it, right? Oh, well, hopefully they're telling the truth and we'll come out with some evidence to support what they say. Still waiting. Okay. Zyrant says, some of you may recall that a few times I've speculated that the Epstein list held a significant number of government entities on it. So many that to release the list would be akin to obliterating our government and probably others. Suddenly, there's no list. I'm sure it's nothing. I'm sure everything's fine. It's fine. We just need to pay more taxes to the carbon tax gods. It's going to work. It's going to work. Robbie says, Pam Bondi said the Epstein client list was on her desk to review for release to the public just a few months ago. Now the Department of Justice she leads claims that there's no Epstein client list. Sorry, but this is unacceptable. Why was she lying then or is she lying now? We deserve answers. We'll never know. It's insane.
DOJ.
It's insane. It's insane. But this is what they want us to believe. And this is the official story. And if you don't believe the official story, well, you're crazy. You're a crazy person. How dare you not believe these talking heads on the TV machine? Okay, here we go.
Maybe releasing the list of Jeffrey Epstein's clients? Will that really happen?
It's sitting on my desk right now to review. That's been a directive by President Trump. I'm reviewing that. I'm reviewing JFK files, MLK files. That's all in the process of being reviewed because that was done at the directive of the president from all of these agencies.
So have you seen anything that you said, oh my gosh?
Not yet.
Yeah, we've gone through the list and everything looked. One list it said tuna, milk, chocolate cereal. I don't like. There were all sorts of lists. Nothing weird at the Epstein list. Okay. Kash Patel says the same thing. In March, Bondi says the FBI has tens of thousands of Epstein videos. I think in this video she actually says child porn. Okay, so, and then all of a sudden, Kash Patel, nothing. It starts with Kash Patel, then goes to Bondi, but it's only 30 seconds. So here we go.
Again, logical play out. If there was a video of...
Hold on. Logical play out. If there was a video of somebody doing the things you're describing and that person somehow is involved in other more powerful conspiracies, maybe you already work for them. Maybe there's other things happening here. Maybe you don't actually work for the people you say you work for. Maybe you work for the FBI. Maybe you're the director of the FBI, but maybe there's another person who says, if you release this list, there's going to be problems. You know, like if you release this list, you and I are going to have words. Who knows? But why should we believe him? The only reason that you should believe somebody is if they can back up what they're saying with evidence, right? Like, I think, right? Here's everything we have. We'll release all the things that we have. And if people look at this and say, what the hell is Pam Bondi talking about then? They look like they're lying, and it looks like they're lying, and their evidence and their stuff doesn't sound like it's legit. Here we go.
Some guy or gal committing felonies on an island, and I'm in charge. Don't you think you'd see it?
Tens of thousands of videos of Epstein with children or child porn. And there are hundreds of victims. And no one victim will ever get released. It's just the volume, and that's what they're going through right now. The FBI is diligently going.
Again,
Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm very skeptical about all of this. Here's Bill? BYL. Is that Bill? Okay, let's see if I get this right. First, they told us that they had flight logs and a redacted contact book. Then Bondi told us Epstein's client list was sitting on her desk. Then they told us the FBI was reviewing tens of thousands of videos of Epstein child pornography videos. Then Bondi told Maria B. that the Department of Justice was working to release more Epstein files, and they even gave us a document release list. And now they tell us there is no such list. So I guess my one question is, why would I vote Republican again on November 7th, 2028, if this is the level of competence and respect I can expect? What would even be the point? Yeah. Uniparty is a uniparty. And I guess if Trump's the head of one of the parties, then he's still part of the uniparty, right? Unfortunately, I guess. Here are people being skeptical, or here are people reporting on Axios removing the article. C3 says Axio removed the Epstein list story and the Department of Justice has not commented on it. Are we being scammed? It feels like a balloon being like tested, right? Like, what are they going to do really if we say there's nothing here? CJ says Axios is not the only one reporting on it. So here's ABC News. But if something like Axios reports on this, these guys don't want to get scooped. They think it sounds plausible. They run with it. Who knows? I genuinely don't know. But other institutions, Disclosed TV, a whole bunch of them have run with this story. So we'll see what's going on. If it comes out, crazy, but I'm not expecting it. I'm not expecting it to come out at this point in time. But I wasn't expecting it to come out previously either. Funky Town says, hold on, Axios removed the Department of Justice FBI document. Axios removed the alleged DOJ document purporting that Epstein didn't kill himself and had no client list from its report. DOJ FBI has not authenticated it and no announcement from the government. Credibility hit for Axios if untrue. So if this is not real, if this is just a big speed bump or a test balloon, then Axios is going to not be believed by a lot of people, right? AG says, if this memo turns out to be fake, a lot of you influencers need to check your sources before causing a panic. It was likely bait, and you took it. It's Axios, for crying out loud, he says. And here is Mike Benz, and he says, Alex Acosta, the Department of Justice official who gave Jeffrey Epstein the sweetheart plea deal in 2008. So those are reasons to think maybe it's not real. Mike Benz is breaking down maybe a reason to think it is real. He was quoted as saying, Alex Acosta was quoted as saying he was, quote, told to back off of Epstein because Epstein belonged to intelligence. Some people were saying a specific intelligence. Look in the chat if you're interested. Mysteriously had all 11 months of Department of Justice emails to him in that time period just disappear, mysteriously, gone. No one knows what happened to any of the main guy's emails during that whole year, and no one has tried to recover them. Nothing to see here, guys. I'm sure it's fine. Everything's fine. There's lies. What do you mean lies? Yowza. Here is Tom Fitton from Judicial Watch, and he says 3 months after we sued for the Epstein records, Pat Bondi, Department of Justice, FBI Director Kash Patel leaked to left-wing Axios, not the court, that Epstein killed himself, had no client list, and suggested Judicial Watch and the American people essentially won't get any more records other than some video from cameras that don't show what happened in Epstein's cell. So he's not happy about what's going on. Again, I'm not sure if this is legit or if we're having a fast one pulled on us. And Wokeness says, in 2019, the FBI raided Epstein's home in New York City and discovered hidden safes with computer disks and stashes of footage. What was it? Where is it? It's Leisure Suit Larry, man. It's all 6 episodes of Leisure Suit Larry with saves, endless game saves. I don't know, man. Brandon says, I've looked into this. All of these images are real. The Epstein on the stretcher in the photo was published in the newspaper. So his nose is different.